If you're a gig economy worker or an independent contractor, you're going to receive this year a 1099 NEC. But what exactly is it, and how does it detail your earnings, and what do you do with that form, really, come tax time? So I wanted to bring on an expert for you, a certified financial planner and enrolled agent, Stephanie McElheny, the president of financial planning at Aspen Wealth Strategies in the Metro Denver, Colorado marketplace. We've had Stephanie on the channel before, so I definitely recommend you watch any of those videos after this one. So I'm excited to have Stephanie back on the channel. So Stephanie, welcome back. How is your day going today?
It's pretty good. Thanks for having me back on the channel, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you're watching this video is going to go into specifically the 1099 NEC. This is going to help you out. Massive value. I'm pumped to have Stephanie back on the channel. So Stephanie, if this is the first time that someone is meeting you, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of roll into exactly what the 1099 NEC is.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I am a certified financial planner, a CFP, and an EA, an enrolled agent. So a CFP is somebody that just takes a look at people's comprehensive financial planning picture. Specifically, though, because of my enrolled agent designation, I have a specific focus on personal income taxes. So not only am I helping people get a grasp on the big picture, but I'm also making sure that they are aware and cognizant of any tax implications that some of the financial strategies that they're employing could have on them. So an EA is essentially like a CPA, but just kind of the tax half of the CPA. So we don't really deal with the accounting side of things, but we do, similar to CPAs, have unlimited practice rights before the IRS with who we can represent and what tax matters we can handle.
Well, I appreciate that. A true expert. Again, I appreciate you being here back on the channel. So today we're talking about this 1099 NEC. Frankly, this was kind of new to me as well, because I know this from different classifications or verbiage in years prior. But what exactly, I guess, on the high level, what is this 1099 NEC?
Yep. So 1099 NEC is essentially the I don't want to even say the updated version of the 1099 miscellaneous, but it's kind of branched off. And I think the last year that the 1099 NEC was used was actually like 1982 or something. So before you or I were even born. But the 1099 NEC, that is essentially, it stands for non-employee compensation, and it stands for, it's essentially a record of your full year self-employed earnings. So it doesn't really matter when you started, as long as we're talking about a calendar year. So, for 2020, we're looking back to that year. But again, this year we're using the NEC form, but it's going to just be the record of your self-employed earnings for the year, plus any federal income tax or, state income tax that you would have withheld. So in the previous video, we talked about paying taxes, self-employment taxes, federal taxes. Typically, when you receive this Form 1099 NEC, you're not going to see any withholding on the federal or state side. It's probably going to have zero there, which is why it's important to file taxes quarterly. But just keep an eye on that, and just be aware if you did withhold taxes for whatever reason, that you're reflecting that when you go to file the taxes. And if you're not seeing that, and maybe it's a surprise, that you're kind of aware that in future years you'll likely have to take on the burden, if you will, of filing those quarterly taxes yourself.
Awesome. So, a summation of your independent contractor earnings. And if you're watching this, if you drive for any of these gig economy apps, DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, Postmates, Grubhub, Amazon Flex, Shipt, Instacart, there's a ton of them, right? You are going to receive a 1099 NEC. Now, I know in the past it's been referred to as 1099 miscellaneous.
Yep.
Is there any difference between that?
So there is now. So the 1099 miscellaneous still exists. It's still around. It's just now used to report miscellaneous income. So things like, maybe rent, payments to an attorney, just kind of random stuff. So it does still exist. The reason the IRS decided to reinstitute the 1099 NEC is because there were separate filing deadlines with some of the income on the 1099 miscellaneous, and they are hoping that it makes it easier for gig economy workers to get their taxes filed with less confusion.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. Now I know that we kind of mentioned, who gets it, right? Independent contractors. Yep. I mean, that could be, even other independent contractors,
yep.
If you're a plumber, what have you, electrician,
yep.
if you're an independent contractor. Now I have seen them starting to roll, or really they've all basically, dropped into my email. I get notifications, hey,
yep.
your 1099 is ready. So should I have already received it? And then
yep.
kind of who sends them out? Should I have already received it? Or just talk to us a little bit about like the dates there.
Yep, sure. So first of all, yeah, you're right. If you're an independent contractor, the cutoff limit is kind of like $600. If you're under
right.
$600, they may not necessarily send you one. But if you're making over $600, you should have already received it, at least electronically. So the mail has been fairly slow, at least in this part of the world. We've had fairly significant delays through the Postal Service, but they were supposed to be ready. Typically in any year, it's January 31st, because this year it fell on not a weekday. February 1st was right. The deadline. So theoretically, again, if you have electronic access to that, you should already have it in your hands. But if they mailed it, I would give it another maybe a week or so before you start wondering where that is. But in terms of who you're going to receive it from, really from any business that you worked for, any gig business. So that could be Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. You rattled off quite a few names there, but
there's a lot. Yes.
Yeah. So don't just assume that you're going to receive one 1099 NEC because you're thinking, hey, I was an independent contractor. I fall under non-employee compensation. Those companies they're not talking to each other. So,
right.
Regardless of how many, places you worked at, you won't just receive one. You will receive 1099 NEC from any company that you worked for in a given year, assuming that you earned over $600 with them.
Exactly. Lead in for that last point that Steph gave us. So again, if you're earning $600 typically or more exactly, you're going to see that in your emails, in communication from these companies, $600 in gross revenue from these companies. And yes, you will receive a 1099 NEC from really any company that hits that $600+. So yep. Make sure to check your email here. So again, I've been seeing them, coming in. I already basically have my 1099 NECs for all of these
yep.
apps. And again, there's quite a few. So what do I do with it? I mean, I'm not a financial expert, I'm a driver. If you're watching this, what do we do with these 1099 NECs?
Yep. So you should, if you are the I don't want to use employee. I would use that loosely because it's non-employee compensation, right? But you working for these companies and as an independent contractor, you're going to actually receive, when you receive the 1099 NEC, you should see copy B, essentially it'll say on it, because you're the one receiving it, you're not the one sending it out. So it's actually not your responsibility to file it with the IRS. What you're going to do with it is you're going to use it to fill out your Form 1040 that's due in April every year, April 15th, and that's your federal tax return. You'll also have to use it on your state tax return. So I won't really get into the state details because it really does vary state by state in terms of filing, quarterly filings, all of that. But you're going to use those figures on your 1099 NEC that you get, and you're actually going to put those gross wages on line 1 of your Schedule C, which is part of your Form 1040. So whether if you're using a tax professional, they should kind of understand all of this and be able to direct you to kind of what forms you need to bring them and where they're going to ultimately kind of plug those numbers in. If you're using a tax software, whether it be, TurboTax, H&R Blocks, whatever it is, you'll want to be cognizant of, and hopefully it should prompt you on that. But if it's asking you, did you receive a 1099 NEC? Did you receive multiple 1099 NECs? You should be, again, filling out Schedule C, which is part of the Form 1040, and you're going to be putting those figures on line 1 of that form.
I can confirm that. Yeah, just to kind of restate your last point there. So 1040 is really the, was it? Well, I'm going to make sure I use the right verbiage here. Is that like the main form we're using in our filing, right? The 1040?
Correct. Yep. The 1040 is That's kind of everything. That's the
Right.
big form that's going to have anything from a federal perspective. So keep in mind again, folks, that that has nothing to do with your state taxes. I would recommend that you go onto your state website, Department of Revenue website, whatever website they have, to figure out what forms you need to file for them. Again, because they're all different, and when you actually owe the taxes are going to be slightly different based on the state. But yes, the 1040 is the big one. And there's multiple schedules with it and addendums and all this fun stuff, because the IRS doesn't like to make it easy on us as taxpayers. But yeah, Schedule C is essentially compensation for like sole proprietors, which essentially is what an independent contractor is. That they're working for themselves, and so that's why we use the Schedule C for that.
And I can tell you, if you're watching this and you are looking at using a TurboTax self-employed, let's say, I've been doing that myself for the past couple of years. It's very easy. It'll just walk you through any additional income, and make sure you're keeping a copy, at least digitally, of these 1099 NECs,
Yep.
because like Steph mentioned, you're going to have to fill that out. And or if you're using, let's say, a CPA or other tax preparer, obviously they're going to need those forms as well. Well, speaking of those forms here, go ahead.
Well, and real quick, Mike, if you don't mind me adding, so
Please.
you know, people are saying, or people might be asking, okay, it's filed on my behalf. I don't have to actually file the 1099 NEC with anybody, but kind of where does that come into play? You know, of course, like I mentioned, that you're going to file that information on line 1 of your Schedule C, but the IRS is going to match up the information on those forms with what you put on your 1040 Schedule C line 1, to make sure that you're accurately reporting all of that. So just be cognizant of that. That, you know, if you have 4 1099 NECs that, you know, you're reporting $50,000 across all of them, that the IRS is going to look at what you're reporting on your 1040 for that, on Schedule C line 1, and they're going to say, is that $50,000, you know, essentially jiving with the 4 1099 NECs that we got from those 4 different companies for this individual. So make sure that you are keeping a good record of everything, that you received everything, and that you're reporting the total amount across all of your forms on that Schedule C.
Yeah, and your next step, if you're watching this after this video, is make sure to watch the walkthrough that Steph and I did, more so on taxes and deductions. I'll leave that video linked above. Make sure to watch that after this one. But you know, today I really want to deep dive on this 1099 NEC. But speaking of, I mean, what happens if I don't receive the 1099 NEC? You know, maybe the company hasn't sent it, or maybe I am. Let's say, you know, the plumber, electrician, what have you, that's an independent contractor. What if I just don't have the form yet? What happens?
Yeah. So, you know, depending on, hopefully whoever you're working for makes this easy. And I actually did some research. So of course I'm not in the gig economy myself, but I was looking around. Okay, you know, if I was an Uber driver, or if I was doing DoorDash, you know, what's going on if I don't get my 1099 NEC? And a lot of these companies have a specific website for you know, information on if you don't get the form, who do you contact, who do you reach out to, what email address should you use, and a lot of them even say, you know, reach out to this specific email address, giving us details that you didn't receive it. Some will even say, I think, don't email more than once necessarily. It may take a few days to get back to you, because, you know, if you're opening up a new case with them, that could delay them responding to the first one. So I would go on a case-by-case basis, a business-by-business basis. You know, use your Google Foo. You know, look at, hey, you know, I work for this company. What if I didn't get it? Now that's easy to say, right? If you're with Uber or DoorDash or one of the bigger players in this space. But let's say, you know, to Mike's point, what if you're a plumber or something, a smaller business? You should go directly to your manager, the business that you're essentially contracting for directly, and ask them.
Exactly, that's well said. Very powerful. Make sure to drop a like on this video if you appreciate that from Steph here. And exactly, I'll say the same thing. You know, there's definitely resources. These companies, all of the established apps in the gig economy, they've been established. They have resources for you. Simply just do a search there and find the right website to get a copy of that. So as we kind of land the plane here on our deep dive, really, is there any other specifics, anything else we should know, details, deadlines about this 1099 NEC?
Yep. Mike, I would just say, you know, and sent you a link on this. So if somewhere you can kind of link to it or provide in the comments, I think that'll be beneficial. But guys, taxes are overwhelming, and I live in this world and I deal with taxes, and they're extremely confusing. Depending on if you're using a tax professional or preparing yourself, there's just a lot of information out there, and it's kind of a jungle in terms of all the different resources and what you have to do and when you have to do it and who you have to file with. So the one link I send to Mike is actually a fairly good resource from the IRS itself, kind of sharing some different resources, what you should be aware of, what you should be prepared for. And like I said, if you have a tax professional, hopefully they're helping you with that. Obviously, if you're filing yourself using software, they should, have resources for that. But I would really encourage folks to either go to that link or, go directly to the IRS website. Do your research. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you're being proactive, which is great. I would recommend watching that other video. It is a bit longer and obviously more detailed with the nuances of everything. But I think it's really important too, especially like I said, if you're filing taxes yourself, to be your own advocate, and to make sure that you feel comfortable with what you need, where it's at, because again, it's not easy, it's complicated. And again, I would just recommend doing as much research as you can ahead of time too, so that you feel comfortable, again, doing your own taxes if that's the case, or advocating for yourself if you're using a preparer or software.
Well, I appreciate that. That's super powerful. And I mean, like you mentioned there, really my call to action to you watching this, here are your next steps. With all of these videos that Steph's advising us in the financial space here, having these, tax forms, I would rewatch this video. There's actually time codes linked down below in the description, and we'll certainly include Stephanie's link that she sent over down in the description as well. And then I would also watch that more full walkthrough on taxes, deductions, really whenever you're watching this video, simply to educate yourself, or if you're watching this during tax time. So Steph, I appreciate you being on the channel here. Again, lots of value. Definitely drop a like if you're watching this and you got value in this video. And I am going to link another video for you right over here that I want you to click or tap the screen on, and definitely drop a like again if you got value in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.